What's up, everybody? Another edition of the Refuse to Lose Seattle Mariners podcast, brought to you by Mariners on SI, part of the Sports Illustrated family of networks. I am Brady Farkas with you. Reminder, these episodes come out every Tuesday and every Friday, and then we're always writing. Myself, my coworker, Taryn Kovacs, do what we hope is a great job, what we think is a great job at providing you all the Mariners news, notes, contents, comments, commentary, history, roster moves, the latest in social media videos of the starting pitchers throwing bullpens at spring training. Spring training has sprung, and we've got everything you need at Mariners on SI. And again, these episodes come out every Tuesday and every Friday. We hope that you enjoyed Tuesday's episode with Jeff Idelson, the longtime president of the Baseball Hall of Fame, as we get ready for Ichiro to go into the Hall of Fame this summer. We'll have a great episode today as well with Tim Kurkjian, the longtime ESPN MLB insider, who is one of the best in the business. He will be with us about midway through the episode also. We've got plenty to get to. Again, reminder, I am going to spring training next week. I will be there February 20th. That is going to be 6 days from the time this podcast is coming out. The first game is February 21st. 6 days. February 21st will be 1 week from the time you're hearing this podcast for the first time. Mariners Padres. I cannot wait for it. I've already got my flight picked out for opening day as well. So I will be in Seattle. Maybe look forward to meeting some of our listeners as well. But without further ado, let's go for episode 2 of season 2.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
If I'm Jerry DiPoto and if I am Justin Hollander, I am on the phone right now with Craig Breslow and the Boston Red Sox. Okay? Because the Red Sox made a huge move the other day, right? On Wednesday night, they made the huge move to sign Alex Bregman, the 3-year, $120 million deal. As a result, I think a couple of things have happened. One, I would just say I think the Red Sox are one of the few favorites in the American League. I think the powers in baseball land in the National League. I think there's really no question about it that the Dodgers, the Mets, the Braves, the Phillies are 4 of the probably 5 best teams in baseball, and they all reside in the National League. So I think the American League is far more open, which is why it's been so frustrating to see what the Mariners have or have not done this offseason, because I think the opportunity has really been there to go and try to seize something. We think the Yankees are pretty darn good. I think the Red Sox are up there. I think the Red Sox, with the move to get Bregman, are in a position to definitely make the playoffs. I think they're in a position to maybe win the division in the AL East. As a result, maybe get the number 1 seed in the American League playoffs. And therefore, when you're in that position, you are in a position to go to the World Series. Like, I think that's where the Red Sox are at. The Red Sox went 81-81 last year, and they did so with Trevor Story missing, 130 games, Tristan Casas missing 100, Masataka Yoshida missing a bunch of games as well. I think all 5 of their starting pitchers missed time, and Lucas Giolito was out for the year. They didn't have Liam Hendricks all season. They went 81-81 doing all of that. With Story hopefully healthy and Bregman now in the fold and Casas healthy and Yoshida at some point, like right now, and look, Crochet and Buehler, I think the Red Sox are really darn good. This isn't really about them, but they have gotten themselves, I think, to be so good, and they've given themselves so much depth that they now have real roster redundancy, and that's where the Mariners come in. Okay, you look at the Red Sox, Alex Bregman's probably, most likely, going to play second base. He's always played third for the Astros. He's going to play second here for the Red Sox. So what happens now to Vaughn Grissom? Vaughn Grissom was a top 100 prospect who they acquired last year from the Atlanta Braves in a trade for the future Cy Young winner in the National League, Chris Sale. Vaughn Grissom had a terrible year last year, right? Hit under 200, was hurt, was sick. I think only played in 31 games. So really on kind of a downturn last season. This year, healthy, puts on 20 pounds of muscle. The team was really excited about him. Up until 3 days ago, he was expected to be the starting second baseman for this team at the age of 24 years old, right? Like a starter on a really good Red Sox team that we already thought was going to be pretty good. He now no longer has a real role for them. And it's not as simple as, oh, we'll just stash him in AAA and bring him up the minute somebody gets hurt, because they've got 2 of the top 15 prospects in baseball right there also that are also infielders, and Christian Campbell and Marcelo Meyer. All this is to say, the Red Sox don't need all of these guys. Look, you're not, as the Mariners, going to come out and trade for Marcelo Meyer and Christian Campbell. They're not going to give you easily 2 of the top 15 prospects in the sport. So who do you move to after that? Okay, what do you got beyond that? Oh, you got Grissom, 24 years old, 5 or 6 years of team control, prospect pedigree, and major league ready right now. Is an infielder, play second base. That's all the things the Mariners need. And look, I don't think the cost would be that high. The Red Sox don't have a whole lot of leverage here because they don't need him at second. They don't need him at short. They don't need him at third. It's not like he's their immediate depth behind him because they got David Hamilton there who was on the team last year. They got Ceddanne Rafaela who could play in the infield if they absolutely had to. And they got the 2 prospects I just told you about. So the Red Sox have a lot of answers already. Vaughn Grissom is a redundancy and is a guy they don't really need. As a result, I don't think the cost would be that high for the Mariners. And he could come in and I think be the starter day one. Now, look, yes, they've got Ryan Bliss. Yes, they've got Dylan Moore. I told you on Tuesday that this team is better when Dylan Moore can exploit his amazing versatility. Ryan Bliss might be just as good as Vaughn Grissom, but I don't know. And I can tell you this, I'd rather have 2 bites at the apple than 1. That's for certain. Oh, Brady, but we have Cole Young coming up. Great. How about this? Maybe Vaughn Grissom plays third and Cole Young plays second and Polanco becomes the DH. Maybe that happens. Maybe Cole Young stays in AAA the entire year. Grissom plays second this year. And then next year, if Polanco is gone, well, then the spot in the infield just opened up. I'm going to let future GM Brady worry about what happens there. And all I can tell you is that you have a good player in Vaughn Grissom with a good pedigree who's healthy this year, who no longer has a role, who's a former top 100 prospect, who has 5 years of team control. Like, this is the zone that Jerry DiPoto lives in. Like, all the memes I see on social media, let Jerry cook. This would be Jerry cooking. Like, this is the move to make. Vaughn Grissom, I would think, has to be available. The Red Sox don't need him now, and they don't need him in the future. He's been well thought of. He came up at 23 and played well for the Braves in a bigger sample size. Played terrible last year, was on the downturn. I don't think would cost that much. And look, if Ryan Bliss beats him out, then so be it. Vaughn Grissom has another option year, has another minor league option left. But I got to throw numbers at the problem. The Mariners need help in the infield. They need offensive help anywhere where they can find it. The Nico Horners of the world were not available this offseason. Vaughn Grissom would seem to be. And I've talked to people over the course of the offseason that aren't huge fans of Grissom. Well, you know what? When it becomes take a flyer on a guy who might have more talent than anybody you have right now, right? Vaughn Grissom today might be a better option playing every day than Dylan Moore. Might be a better option playing every day than Ryan Bliss. If he's not, then fine. He goes to AAA here, but he's got more of a path to getting back to the majors than he does in Boston. I saw Mike Salk over at 710 Seattle right earlier today that maybe the Red Sox should re-engage with the Mariners, or the Mariners should re-engage with the Red Sox over Tristan Casas. I love Casas, and I think Salk's theory is that they're going to put Devers at first, Bregman at third, and now Casas is the expendable one. I love Casas. I think he could hit 40 home runs in Boston. And I'd love for the Mariners to have him, but I'm calling on Vaughn Grissom first and just kind of seeing where we're at. Can I get Vaughn Grissom for some 19-year-old pitching prospect? Because if that's the case, I would do it. This is the zone that Jerry DiPoto lives in. The Mariners need help offensively. They like young players. They like prospects. They like guys who have kind of failed out of some other spot. That's Grissom to a T. And he could come here and start day one. And if Cole Young's ready to come up at some point this year, which I hope that he is, and it sounds like he might be up sooner rather than later, and that would be great. But when Cole Young gets here, I got to think the Mariners are able to figure it out defensively and the alignment and how it works. I got to think they are. Grissom might be a guy. Actually, I have to scratch that. Grissom is a guy who's worth calling on. I'd call Craig Breslow tomorrow if I were Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander. Does it mean a deal gets done? No, of course not. But I think there is a chance that it could. Vaughn Grissom is not necessary on the Boston Red Sox at this point. All right, let's move on to this because Cal Raleigh was on the Hot Stove Show on 710 ESPN Seattle earlier this week. And I thought just had a really interesting, I say that I don't know that it was interesting. It just really proved something to me. Okay. Can we get the audio of Cal? Okay, here it is. So Cal on 710 ESPN Seattle talking about his expectations for the season. The question about the expectations was asked by Gary Hill Jr.
I mean, to me, I think this year it's just coming out ready to go and be prepared and knowing that's going to be a hard season, knowing that it's not easy to do what we want to achieve, but we got to go out there and we have to do it. We have to make that adjustment, and it has to happen this year. We have to get back, and, I'm setting high expectations for our guys, but I believe in this team, and it's kind of where it starts is in spring training these next few weeks.
Now, that sounds on the surface like cliches, probably, right? It sounds like it. Now, we got high expectations. I got high expectations. I believe in this team. It's spring training. It all starts here. It sounds cliche. It sounds like the same athlete press conference jargon you've heard for your whole life, however old you are. To me, I heard something different. That clip right there just further solidifies to me that Cal Raleigh is the leader of this team, that Cal Raleigh is the heart and soul of this team. Does not mean he's the best player. Does not mean he's the most complete player. He's pretty darn complete. Right? Platinum glove winner, gold glove winner, should have been a silver slugger, 34 homers and 100 RBIs. That's pretty damn complete. But that clip doesn't mean that he is the most complete player. It doesn't mean he's the most talented player. But he is this team's heart and soul. And that clip just solidified it for me. I already knew it. I was already feeling it at the end of last year. But that just continues to evidence it, right? I'm setting high expectations for our guys. I believe in this team. We've got to go out and do it, and it's got to happen this year. It seems to me like Cal Raleigh is putting a real emphasis and a real urgency into this roster. And you know what? I appreciate it because it's an emphasis on urgency that I didn't think was there last year. My complaint about Scott Service last year was not that Scott Service didn't handle the bullpen right, or not that Scott Service didn't handle the platoon situation right. That was never my argument against Scott. The reason why I came out really in June, I started at least asking the question about Scott. I think I even wrote the question in an original article on Mariners SI last April about Scott Service. I started asking the question in general, have the players tuned him out? Has he been there too long? And is he too forgiving? I never felt that the urgency really existed with this team last year. And I understand baseball's a grind. It's a long season. And you can't force the issue. And you don't want to be in guys' grills. And this isn't the 70s. And you can't be Billy Martin. You can't even be Lou Piniella. I get all of that. But I really felt that Scott did kind of the disappointed dad vibe too often. And I do think that there's an urgency with Dan Wilson. And there's an urgency with Cal Raleigh. Look, man, this was ARB year one for him. He might not be here forever. And Cal just turned 28 years old, right? He's not 24. He's been to the puppet show and he's seen the strings. He knows what it's like. He's been to the playoffs. He's missed the playoffs twice by a game. He's graduated into a really good player. He might be an all-star this year. He's graduated into a team leader. The team looks to him. And he's tired of, we can't say he's tired of losing, but he's tired of falling short. And I think he is out there with an intensity that this team needs, with an attitude that this team lacked for a lot of last season. Okay, look, it can't be just one guy. You need a bunch of other guys on this team to have the same urgency, to have the same mindset. But it can start somewhere. It's got to start somewhere. And for this team, to me, it starts with Cal. He is at the top of the food chain when it comes to the guy that guys look up to, because he's got the perfect cross-section of everything, right? He runs the pitching staff, the best pitching staff in the American League last year, maybe the best pitching staff in all of baseball last year and in contention for the best pitching staff, certainly starting rotation this year. Cal Raleigh runs it. So the pitchers all look up to him. They all are on the same page with him. Conversely, he goes 34 and 100. The offensive guys have to be on board with him too. This is not some catcher who's great defensively, but hits 192 and has 4 bombs and 14 ribbies by the end of the year. That's not who Cal Raleigh is. Cal Raleigh's got his foot in both camps, and he's excellent in both of them. That's how you get to be super respected around the league, right? Yadier Molina, Salvador Perez, these catchers who are at the top of the food chain. They're there because they're great defensively, they're great with pitchers, and they're great offensively. Cal Raleigh is the leader of this team. Look, they need a big, big year from Julio if they want to succeed. They need a big year from Arozarena. They need a bounce-back year from J.P. Crawford. They need all of that. But Cal Raleigh's leadership is going to be hugely important as well. Hugely important. And I remember, look, I know we took a large portion of the offseason off, right? But if you go back to season 1, right? Last year, season 1, end of the season in September, we had Cal Raleigh's dad on. Okay, Todd Raleigh is a guy that I'm not going to oversell it, right? I've never met Todd Raleigh, but he and I have become professionally friendly, I think is probably the best way to put it. So Todd Raleigh grew up in Vermont. I've done radio in Vermont for nearly a decade. So I've never met Todd Raleigh, but I got plenty of listeners there who've told me stories. Todd Raleigh's come on my radio show. We were able to get him on this podcast. So he and I have a bit of a relationship, just in that we've talked prior to him coming on here. And he made it clear to me then that Cal loves Seattle. He loves his role on this team, and he's really grown into being a leader. I mean, you look at him, you can't be a leader very easily as a rookie, and you can't be a leader very easily when you're not a big part of the on-field product. Cal Raleigh is a huge part of the on-field product, and as a result of what he does on both sides of the ball and with the pitching staff, I think he's a guy that everybody here really, really respects. And that clip, again, it might have sounded like cliches, but to me, he's putting the urgency out there that this team, this organization has needed for a while, right? We look at it and say ownership or front office doesn't have urgency. I think that the guys in the dugout are going to, and I don't think they necessarily have recently. I think they're going to now. And Cal says, we've got to do it this year. He said, it's got to happen now. And he also said, I'm setting the expectations high. I believe in our guys. He didn't say, hey, the front office does this, Dan Wilson does that. He said, I do it. That said something to me. All right, we're going to get to Tim Kirchin here in just a couple of moments, but I do want to, I mentioned Julio, so I want to just kind of get to a thought on him. John Morosi was on 710 ESPN Seattle earlier on Thursday. At this point, I'm taping this very late Thursday night, but he was on earlier today on Thursday and had this to say about Julio and where he's at going into 2025.
That's what I'm watching. And his performance is going to be what answers it one way or the other. Can he be more consistent? He's still a young player, but he's not a kid anymore.
The big storyline for the Mariners this year, outside of can the pitching staff stay healthy, is Julio. Right. And we see it everywhere. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. Okay. The team will go as Julio goes. Julio was good in September. The rest of the offense was good in September. When Julio was really good in August of 2023, the offense was really good in August of 2023. Julio is the straw that stirs the drink. We all know that. Okay. We all understand that. Again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. But to Morosi's point, the thing to watch this year for the Mariners, outside of pitcher health, is can Julio be consistent? Because you look at his year last year, he hit 273. 273 in today's climate of hitting is extraordinarily good, I think. Okay, to hit 273 is very, very good given where pitching is at right now. And if Julio hit 273 every month of the season and then ended at 273, I'd be good with it. But for him to hit 350 one month and 200 or 215 another month, and for him to hit 380 one month and 190 one month, that's what can't happen. This team cannot afford Julio to go through the stops and starts, cannot afford Julio to go through the lulls of a season. It's a lot of pressure to put on a 24-year-old, but heavy is the head that wears the crown. And Julio is the crown of the organization. They need him. And I will be so kind of geared in on just watching his approach this season, because my organizational knock on the Mariners last year, outside of the lack of urgency, was I really didn't feel like they had an approach at the plate for a lot of the year. I do think it got better when Dan and Edgar came in, but by and large, I didn't think they had an approach. The very first episode of this podcast, I think, was July 8th of 2024. And the first segment that I did was on this team not having an approach and not having a consistent approach. And I think Julio tied himself up in knots last year, being unsure what to do. Am I going for the fastball? Am I going for the inside pitch? Am I going for the outside pitch? Well, now I'm trying to go the other way. Well, now I'm late on everything. Tied himself up in knots. I think the Mariners just need to do a better job at identifying what is their offensive identity. Who are they going to be? Look, if you're going to be a team that doesn't let here's an approach. We don't let fastballs go by, right? We swing when there are fastballs in the zone early in the count, we swing, right? And pitch count be damned. Okay, because if we're going to get a bunch of fastballs and we're going to lace them and they're all going to find someone's glove and the guy throws a 91 pitch complete game, then so be it. But we're not going to let you get ahead all day, get to 0-2 and then strike us out. That would be an approach. It's also an approach that we're going to crowd the plate. It's an approach that we're going to take till you throw a strike. There's all kinds of approaches out there. I want to see what the Mariners are going to do and what Julio's is going to be, because I think that Julio is a guy who needs to just swing at pitches in the zone. And it sounds simple. It sounds so simple, but it's the truth. How many times do we see Julio geared up last year? And even if it's 0-0, right? He's swinging at a fastball that almost hit him in the hands. But like, oh, it's a fastball, I have to swing. Or, hey, it's on the outer half, I have to go for it. It's a slider 7 feet off the outside corner. Pitches in the zone. Have the discipline to recognize when it's in the zone and the discipline to recognize when it's not in the zone and attack it. I don't mind if Julio swings early in the count. Just swing at strikes. Okay, swing at pitches that can be hit. And if you do that, then there will be a consistency to your game that wasn't necessarily there in 2024. So Morosi's right, I think. And Morosi gets a lot of grief, and people call him the yapper. I see that on social media. But I think he's right there. Julio is hugely important to this roster. His early season success is hugely important to this roster. His approach will help dictate all of that. And they're counting on him in a big way. All right. I want to go out to the phone line now. I want to bring on the legend, the ESPN MLB insider, Tim Kurkjian. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's been doing it at a very, very high level. He's one of the best personalities in all of baseball. Tim, thank you for being with us, my friend, on the Refuse to Lose podcast. How are you? All right, that was Tim Kurkjian, longtime ESPN MLB insider. He is one of the best, and he just gave us 15 or so really good minutes on the M. Some great stories, right, about Ichiro. Some great stories about Griffey and covering the Mariners earlier in his career, and seeing, just how good Griffey was. I always eat up that stuff, right? I eat up the nostalgia stuff, but his stuff on Julio, his stuff on Cal, his stuff on Cal's approach. Taryn my coworker Taryn Kovac and I over at Mariners on SI, we're going to write up a bunch of what Tim Kurchin had to say. It's already kind of marinating in my head as we marinating. Is that the right word? Ruminating? Is that the right word? It's in my head and I'm thinking about it here as I talk. There's going to be a lot of kind of connections to the Tim Kurchin interview as well. But the Mariners just need more good players, right? And like we could talk for 15 minutes. We could talk for 45 minutes. Mariners just need more good players. And again, Robinson Cano didn't have trouble at T-Mobile. Neither did Nelson Cruz. Neither did Ichiro, right? If you're a good hitter, you could succeed here. And the Mariners just need to do a better job of getting those good hitters. Could they have used Alonso? Of course they could have. Of course they could have used Pete Alonso. They elected not to. So on we go with the Luke Raley and Donovan Solano tandem at first. But I got to tell you, as we get into spring training, I am getting more excited about the roster. It doesn't mean that the roster is perfect, and it's certainly not as good as it could have been, but I am getting more excited about this team, right? We spent so much of the offseason being upset about what they didn't do. Baseball being back just has me excited about where they're at. Again, it doesn't mean that they're perfect. They're not. But I am more excited. Tim Kurkjian was great. And again, we'll do some written stuff with that interview as well. Another thing that was great, and we'll do our Around the Bases segment to close out the show, but another thing that was great was Jerry DiPoto did a 40-minute interview with Joe Doyle. And Joe Doyle is a guy who hosts the Overslot podcast. And look, I encourage you to go listen to the interview. 40 minutes of Jerry and Joe talking about baseball and talking about the Mariners in a different way, right? So much of, and it's no fault of the media who talks to Jerry, but right? Whenever you talk to Jerry, by and large, you want to hear 90% about where the major league roster is at right now. Joe and Jerry went the other way. It was 90% minor league stuff, amateur scouting, the draft. It was just very, very interesting more than anything. It's the Overslot podcast. You could subscribe to it through, Joe's got a Patreon and some paid content. Look, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money, but I encourage you to go find it and do it. I subscribe to it. Taryn and I subscribe to it as a staff here. Listen to the interview. I thought it was phenomenal, and Joe does a lot of stuff all around the game, but he's had a bunch of Mariners tie-ins here as well, and he's a Seattle guy, and you see him all over social media. And he had Scott Hunter on, a bunch of episodes ago. Joe's really talented at what he does. He's really good in that space. So that's called the Overslot podcast. But listening to that kind of just reaffirmed to me why I ultimately like Jerry. And I'm not naive, right? I think I can be probably a little bit impressionable. I'll drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, right? The guy, a coach, an NFL coach goes to the podium and says all the right things. I tend to fall in love with it. So when you say the right things, I can be impressioned. And I recognize that about myself. But here is what I have always liked about Jerry. And here's why I've always been good with keeping Jerry around. Last July, I said that Jerry should be fired because it was toxic around him. I never said because I think Jerry is awful at his job or because Jerry's a bad guy. But the interview with Joe just kind of crystallized everything. Every time I listen to Jerry DiPoto talk, I feel like I learned something. Now, that doesn't translate into, oh, he's the best GM in the game, right? That doesn't mean that he does the job better than anybody else could. And that's not necessarily a reason to hold on to your job forever. I recognize that too. But I find Jerry to be insightful. I find him to be eloquent generally, with the exception of the 54% comment. I find him to be smart. I find him to be engaging. I find him to be refreshingly open and transparent. And in a business where no one says anything, and a business where the athletes don't really talk and the front office people give you lip service or lies, I think Jerry generally is as honest as he can be, and then probably goes beyond that. Again, transparency and being conversational is not the reason to hold your job. And it doesn't mean that you're the best at it. I can sit here and tell you that, yes, this trade didn't work out or that signing didn't work out. and Jerry swung and missed on something. Of course I can. But one of the reasons why I've always liked him is that I feel like I walk away from his interviews or walk away from his long form content feeling smarter. And look, when the Wheelhouse podcast was out, I felt that way. When he would do 20 minutes on 710 Seattle, I felt that way. I don't know that if you hear Jerry in a 4-minute interview on the MLB network, maybe it doesn't come off that way. But when I hear Jerry unplugged for 40 minutes, like he was with Joe Doyle, I walk away with something from that. And I've always valued that. And I feel like I have learned more about the game listening to Jerry Dipoto talk. So if you think I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, if you think I'm a sucker, maybe, frankly, maybe. But I've always appreciated Jerry. And Jerry did say some interesting stuff to Joe about the Mariners. Here's what he had to say about some prospects. We know the big ones, but he said something pretty fascinating at the end of this clip.
And I feel like the guys have really hit a home run. Like the names you mentioned, Frankie Thon, who oversees our international, contributes with guys like Laz, Michael Arroyo, who I think is really one of the most underrated top prospects in the game. Michael Arroyo is a really good player. We are super excited about where Felnine Celestin's at. We are very excited about adding, Yorger Batista and Kendry Morales from this draft. And I think that the idea that you keep building with these high end, top end, upside guys is great. Now that we're getting a handful of them near the big leagues, we can look back and, this year, Cole or Harry are probably the leaders in the charge. Minimally they'll be in Tacoma on the high end. There's a very real chance that both of them see time in Seattle, if not from the start, and at some point this year.
At some point this year, Cole Young, Harry Ford will be in Seattle. If not at the start, some point this year. He left open the possibility that those guys could be here. Now, I don't think Harry Ford is going to be here at the start of the year, barring injury, right? Cal Raleigh or Mitch Garver are injured in spring training, then possibly Harry Ford gets up there early. But I don't think so, right? Hasn't played at AAA. Cole Young, I think, has a chance to, hit 550 in spring training and earn the job. I would still call the Red Sox on Vaughn Grissom and give yourself another dart at the dartboard. But for Jerry to even say, hey, it's possible that these guys could be up early, I think is noteworthy. And again, Jerry and Joe talked about amateur scouting, talked about the difference between amateur scouting, the levels that, what it's like to watch a high school kid versus a, Latin American player at the age of 15 versus a college player versus a pro player. I walked away educated. I walked away a little bit smarter. And I think I get that a lot when Jerry is the guy. There's so much venom towards Jerry that I feel like is unfounded. I feel like most of the venom goes to ownership, right? Because again, think about this. Jerry has shown a willingness to spend money, right? They went out and signed Robbie Ray. They went out and signed Luis Castillo to an extension. They signed Julio to an extension. So, I think clearly when given financial latitude, Jerry has spent. And when there's deals to be made, Jerry has shown a willingness to give prospects of real high value. Right? So this notion that he prospects hordes and that he won't spend, I think is unfair. On the Castillo front, they gave away Noel Marte and Edwin Arroyo, who were two top 100 prospects. Gave away both of them. Brandon Williamson in the trade for Winker and Suarez. Jake Fraley, who was an established major league player, but a young one, a guy with team control. I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted to give up. Levi Stout, who at the time was a good pitching prospect, who I don't think they would have wanted to give up. They've done all that. So Jerry is not perfect, but I think he takes far too many arrows for the organization than are really his fault, right? I think far more arrows for the organization. All right, let's wrap it up here. All right, Trevor Plouffe, former big leaguer over at John Boy Media, just absolutely crushed the Mariners earlier this week for their offseason.
The Mariners, I think, have had the worst offseason relative to what my expectations are of them and where they can be, which is a World Series team. Their offseason was a non-factor. Is that being nice? It's so frustrating because you have that pitching. You're squandering an opportunity to win championships.
You're squandering an opportunity to win championships. I can't say I disagree. It's nice to see the national media get involved in the conversation about the Mariners because so often the Mariners are ignored. It's nice to see the outside world recognize the potential that is here and what could be and is what not and what is not necessarily being realized. So good on Plouffe for saying it. It's easy to say. I hate that the Mariners are a punchline to people, but I'm happy the Mariners are being talked about. Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, Anthony Santander, they should have at least been called upon this year for the Mariners, and they weren't in any way. So, look, Plouffe just echoing all of our frustrations, but I got to say, misery does love company, so it's nice to see other people talking about it as well. Congratulations to Michael Arroyo. We heard that in the Jerry DiPoto, or we heard his name in the Jerry DiPoto comments a little while ago. But Michael Arroyo is going to play for Team Colombia in the upcoming World Baseball Classic qualifier. That comes up at the beginning of March. It will be played in Arizona. So that means Arroyo will take away from spring training for, I would imagine, anywhere up to 2 weeks probably. And there's a round robin. There's 4 teams at the WBC qualifier. I want to say it's China, Colombia, Brazil, and Germany, and I think the top 2 get a chance to go into the World Baseball Classic in 2026. So we'll get a chance to see Arroyo in some meaningful non-spring training games, right? Guys always take great pride in playing for their country. We saw Colombia was in the last World Baseball Classic, and Jose Caballero played for them as well, so there is kind of a Mariners connection to Colombia. But Arroyo will get a chance to play for Team Colombia. I think it's March 2nd through 6th. It's in Arizona. I will have just left Arizona, so I won't be around Arizona at that time. But I'll look forward to watching it and seeing how Arroyo does, just like everybody else. Mariners projected to have 4 All-Stars by ESPN in the way too early All-Star projections from ESPN. M's projected to get Bryce Miller, Logan Gilbert, Cal Raleigh, and Julio. Look, I don't know that I really care how many the Mariners get. But if they get 4, it means that they're probably having a pretty good first half of the season, so I will take it. I would love to see Cal get a chance to get to the All-Star game, right? I want the top right-hand corner of his baseball reference page completely filled out, right? I want to see him up there, All-Star, Silver Slugger, Platinum Glove, Gold Glove. He deserves all of it. He is one of the most special and unique players in the league, as Tim Kirchin told us a little while ago. Switch hitter, power from both sides, 30 and 100, Silver Slugger, potential, Gold Glove, Platinum Glove. He is one of the best players and one of the most impactful players in baseball. I would love to see him land as an All-Star this season. If Julio's an All-Star, means that he's had a good first half of the season. This team needs it, as we talked about. Gilbert, we didn't get to see pitch last year, so yeah, I'd love to see him get another chance. And Bryce Miller, man, he says he's up to 8 pitches now in his repertoire, including the new cutter that he's been working on this offseason. So I can't wait to see him go also. And finally, in today's edition of Former Mariners Alerts, did you know that former Mariners pitcher Horacio Ramirez is a minor league pitching coach? That's right. Horam is a single-A, high-A pitching coach for the Rome Emperors. Great name, Braves affiliate. Ramirez is on their staff in Rome. He played for Rome back in 2006. Does that sound right? That would be a rehab assignment. He was with the Mariners in 2007. I got to tell you, my Horacio Ramirez memories with the Mariners are not as good as the Horacio Ramirez realities. Horacio Ramirez went 8-7 for the Mariners. In my mind, he was like 2-15. Now, he had an ERA, I think, over 7 in Seattle, but somehow won 8 games. But I thought he had far more losses than wins. That's not the case. I hate that the Mariners traded Rafael Soriano to get Horacio Ramirez, because Soriano was an absolute stud, I thought, when he was with Seattle. If you're of a certain age, you remember those bullpens of where Rafael Soriano and Julio Mateo threw every single game. I miss those days. I liked those guys. And then you had, who else was out there? George Sherrill was out there at a point. The M's had a fun bullpen. I don't remember them being any good, but Soriano was good, and so was Mateo. But Horacio Ramirez still kicking it, coaching minor league baseball for the Rome Emperors. That's going to do it for us. I'll talk to you again on Tuesday of next week, and then it's off to spring training for me. I'll be in Peoria by the time we get to our Peoria by the time we get to our Friday episode next week. I can't wait to see what spring training is like. We are 6 weeks, people, from opening day. Everybody stay healthy. Keep watching the social media videos of everybody throwing bullpens, and we'll see you on the other side.